I said, like, in a world full of questions, misunderstandings, and divided opinions, there are moments when people pause and start looking deeper into faith, meaning, and existence. This is one of those moments that has touched the hearts of billions across the world. Islam, a religion that has been discussed, debated, misunderstood, and yet followed by more than 1 billion people with unwavering devotion. I said, like, when people begin to study Islam closely, many of them describe a strange feeling, a sense of clarity, simplicity, and discipline that they had never noticed before. I said, like, it is not just a religion of rituals, but a complete way of life that guides how a person thinks, speaks, behaves, and even how they find peace in silence. I said, like, across the world, from the deserts of Arabia to the cities of Europe and America, millions of people wake up before sunrise, not because they are forced, but because they believe in a direct connection with their Creator. I said, like, this act alone, known as prayer, becomes a reminder that life is not just about material success, but about spiritual alignment. Many outsiders looking in often ask, I said, like, what is it that makes Islam so powerful in the hearts of its followers? The answer is not simple, but it begins with the idea of absolute oneness of God. No divisions, no intermediaries, just one Creator who is closer to a human being than their own heartbeat. I said, like, this belief creates a direct relationship between the human and divine, removing the layers of confusion that often exist in human spirituality. I said, like, as people study deeper, they discover that Islam does not only focus on worship, but also on justice, kindness, honesty, and responsibility. It teaches that every action, no matter how small, has weight and meaning. I said, like, a smile towards another human being is considered charity. Helping the poor is not optional, it is essential. I said, like, standing against injustice is not a choice, it is a duty. These principles shape societies and individuals in ways that often go unnoticed by those who only observe from the outside. I said, like, there are stories from around the world of people who once questioned Islam, but after studying it without bias, they found answers they were searching for all their lives. They described moments of realization where complex questions suddenly become simple. I said, like, why am I here? What is my purpose? What happens after death? Islam does not leave these questions unanswered. I said, like, instead, it provides a structured understanding of life as a temporary journey leading towards accountability and eternity. In this worldview, every human being is responsible for their actions, and every soul will one day return to its Creator. I said, like, this concept brings both fear and hope. Fear of wrongdoing and hope for mercy. And in that balance, many find peace. The daily life of a Muslim is also structured around remembrance. I said, like, 5 times a day, everything pauses. Work, stress, distractions, all are set aside for a few minutes of connection with God. I said, like, this discipline creates a rhythm that anchors the heart in a fast-moving world. In a time where anxiety and depression are rising globally, many researchers and observers have begun to study the psychological impact of such practices. I said, like, they find that structured prayer, fasting, and charity can bring a sense of stability and purpose that modern life often lacks. But Islam is not only about individual peace, it is also about community. The concept of unity is deeply embedded. I said, like, when people stand side by side in prayer, regardless of their race, wealth, or status, all distinctions disappear. A king and a laborer stand on the same ground, bowing to the same Creator. I said, like, this image alone has moved many observers to rethink the meaning of equality. Throughout history, Islam has spread not only, I said, like, through geography, but through ideas, trade, knowledge, and character. I said, like, scholars once translated, preserved, and advanced knowledge in fields like mathematics, medicine, astronomy, and philosophy during times when much of the world was still developing its intellectual foundations. I said, like, this historical contribution remains part of the global legacy of Islamic civilization, yet despite all of this, misconceptions still exist. I said, like, some see Islam through the lens of media headlines or political events, missing the deeper spiritual and ethical framework that defines it. And so the gap between perception and reality remains wide. I said, like, but whenever someone takes the time to study it personally, reading its text, observing its practices, and speaking to its followers, they often come to a different conclusion than what they first believed. I said, like, they find a system that is not random, but deeply structured, not chaotic, but balanced. I said, like, not distant from human nature, but aligned with it. And perhaps that is why Islam continues to grow across the world, quietly, steadily, through personal journeys and inner transformations. I said, like, it is not always about dramatic moments or public declarations, but often about private realizations that change the direction of a life forever. In the end, every person is on a journey of understanding. I said, like, some travel faster, some slower, but all are searching for meaning. And for many, that search leads them to a moment of reflection where they pause, think deeply. I said, like, and realize that the answers they were chasing outside were always meant to be found within a connection to something greater than themselves, something eternal, something consistent, something deeply rooted in faith. I said, like, as this journey of understanding continues, one begins to notice that Islam is not presented as a religion meant only for a specific group of people or a particular region of the world, but rather as a unived. I said, like, universal message directed towards all of humanity. It does not demand blind following, but repeatedly encourages reflection, thinking, and reasoning. Said, like, throughout his teachings, there's a consistent invitation to observe the world, to study creation, to analyze the self, and to ask questions that lead to deeper awareness. I said, like, in fact, the idea of using intellect is not separate from faith in Islam. Instead, it is woven into it. This is why many people who study Islamic teachings with an open mind often describe it as intellectually engaging as well as spiritually fulfilling. I said, like, they find that it does not force belief without understanding, but rather builds belief through science, reasoning, and contemplation. When a person begins to reflect on life from this perspective, even ordinary things start to appear different. I said, like, the rising of the sun, the cycle of day and night, the precision of nature and the complexity of human existence all begin to feel like signs pointing toward a greater order. I said, like, this concept of signs and creation becomes a recurring theme, encouraging human beings to pause and consider that nothing around them is random or meaningless. Every detail of existence is part of a larger design that is both precise and purposeful. I said, like, as people explore this idea further, they often begin to connect it with their own personal experiences. Moments of hardship, moments of loss, moments of unexpected change all start to take on new meaning. If they begin to see it as seeing life as chaotic or unfair, they begin to see it as a journey filled with tests, lessons, and opportunities for growth. In this framework, patience becomes more than just endurance. It becomes an act of strength. I said, like, gratitude becomes more than a feeling, it becomes a practice. And trusting in God becomes more than a belief. It becomes a foundation for emotional stability. Another important aspect that many discover is the emphasis on. Acted like and places on intention. In a world where actions are often judged only by their outcomes or appearances, Islam shifts the focus towards the internal motivation behind those actions. I said, like, a small deed done with sincerity can carry more weight than a large action done for recognition. This idea transforms how people view success and failure. I said, like, it creates a sense that even the simplest act of goodness has value in the eyes of the Creator, even if it goes unnoticed by the world. I said, like, as a result, many individuals find comfort in knowing that their efforts are never wasted, even when they seem insignificant in the eyes of society. Alongside this personal dimension, there is also a strong emphasis on accountability. I said, like, life is not seen as endless or without consequence, but rather as a temporary phase followed by a return to God, where every soul is held responsible for its choices. I said, like, this belief naturally influences behavior, encouraging honesty in private and public life, fairness in dealings with others, and mindfulness in everyday decisions. When a person truly internalizes this concept, it changes how they live, even in small moments. I said, like, words are chosen more carefully, actions are weighed more thoughtfully, and relationships are treated with greater responsibility. But Islam does not only focus on individual transformation, it also strongly emphasizes compassion towards others. I said, like, the idea that every human being deserves dignity is central. Helping the poor, feeding the hungry, caring for orphans, and supporting those in difficulty are not treated as optional moral gestures, but as essential parts of faith. I said, like, this creates a sense of shared responsibility within communities where people are encouraged to look beyond themselves and consider the well-being of others. I said, like, over time, this builds social bonds that are not based only on wealth, nationality, or status, but on shared values of care and mu. I said, like, tool support. As these teachings spread across different cultures and societies, they adapt to diverse environments while maintaining their core principles. This adaptability is one of the reasons Islam has remained relevant across centuries and continents. I said, like, whether in rural villages or modern cities, the same foundational practices can be observed, yet they take shape in ways that reflect local traditions and lifestyles. I said, like, this balance between consistency and flexibility allows it to remain both timeless and practical. However, like many global subjects, Islam is also often viewed through external narratives that do not always reflect its internal reality. I said, like, media portrayals, political events, and cultural misunderstandings can sometimes create a distorted image that does not fully represent the beliefs and practices of ordinary followers. I said, like, because of this, many people initially approach Islam with assumptions shaped by external influences. But when they take time to engage directly with its teachings or interact with its followers, they often experience a shift in perspective. I said, like, they begin to see that behind the headlines and debates, there exists lived reality of ordinary human beings trying to find meaning, live ethically, and maintain a connection with their Creator. I said, like, this realization often leads to deeper inquiry, and in some cases, personal transformation. One of the most striking aspects that many observers mention is the sense of discipline embedded in Islamic practice. I said, like, the structured nature of daily prayers, the annual fasting, and the emphasis on self-control are seen as tools that shape character over time. Rather than being occasional acts of worship, they form a continuous rhythm that influences daily life. I said, like, this rhythm brings order to time, reminding individuals throughout the day that life is not solely driven by work, entertainment, or personal ambition, but I said, like, also by spiritual accountability and reflection. In a fast-paced modern world where distractions are constant and attention is fragmented, this structure provides a sense of grounding that many people find valuable. I said, like, it creates pauses within the day that allow for reflection, gratitude, and realignment of priorities. Over time, these pauses shape not only behavior, but mindset, gradually cultivating patience, humility, and awareness. I said, like, as the exploration of Islam continues, one also encounters its emphasis on balance. It does not promote withdrawal from the world, nor does it encourage excessive attachment to it. I said, like, instead, it guides individuals to engage with life responsibly while maintaining awareness of its temporary nature. I said, like, work, family, social life, and personal goals are all considered important, but they are meant to be pursued within ethical boundaries and with spiritual consciousness. I said, like, this balanced approach allows individuals to participate fully in society while still maintaining inner discipline and purpose. I said, like, ultimately, as one reflects on all these dimensions together, faith, reason, discipline, compassion, accountability, and balance, a broader picture begins to emerge. I said, like, it is a picture of a comprehensive way of life that seeks to address both the inner and outer needs of human beings. And for many who study it deeply, this holistic nature is what leaves the strongest impression. I said, like, it is not seen merely as a set of beliefs, but as a complete framework for living with meaning, direction, and responsibility in a complex world.